right. A very pleasant good morning, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Morning Briefing. I'm Jeff DeForest, along with one Mike Lubie. Lubitz here on NoFilter.net, Caffeine TV, the various other platforms that are kind enough, gracious enough, maybe dumb enough to carry this show. Good to be with you. Peel yourself off the mat Monday, a sensational weekend. I remember, Lubie, when it all got started in the 93-94 season. South Florida, as it's known, Miami, Fort Lauderdale area, Palm Beach, I guess you can include the rest of the state, as we've said, is nothing but redneck hillbillies that are all out there crazy, screaming, hey, we got to protect the Second Amendment. We don't need any of that. But nobody was sure if hockey was going to work here, and it did. It caught on very quickly. This was kind of a Bush League town at the time. We had just come into the NBA in 1988. 93, two professional teams make their mark here in South Florida, as you also had the birth of the then Florida Marlins, now known as the Miami Marlins, and now known as a cinch to accomplish the under that we were looking for from day number one. We told you we had good inside information on this. A very loyal Marlin employee telling me, hey, this team is going to suck. They get off to one of the worst starts in the history of Major League Baseball. Holy Frank Robinson, what are we talking about here? They're like 0-22 out of the chute. And I just did the calculations, Lubie. I did the degenerate math. And the Marlins would have to win 58 of their remaining 102 games. That's 58-44 the rest of the way, while they're selling off players like there's no tomorrow in order to accomplish a dead heat, a push on our over-under bet. 58 more wins they need, Lubie, out of 102 games. It ain't happening. Give me my money now. But I don't know that we need to hedge. But if you are thinking about making a wager on anything, there's one place to go. That would be BetOnline, your number one source for the NBA, the NHL playoffs, both final series coming up this week. Every stat, every matchup, and even live odds while the games are being played, man. You want to change your mind in the middle of the game like you always do, Lubie? Team scores one goal. You text me right away. It's over. Yeah. You can go ahead and send it in on the other side if you want. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack. I got 21. You want to push? Or poker or unwind with one of their over 150 slot games. Head to the website today and get in on all the action. Don't forget to use the promo code BELIEVE. That's BLEAV, BELIEVE, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online. The game starts here. All right, it gets underway, and, we were talking about this, 93, 94. People, the joke was at the time, Lubie, you were what, 10 years old around then? No, 10 years old. 12 years old as the Panthers came into existence, the Florida Panthers. They were playing at what is now considered the old Miami Arena, which was the subject of a little demolition derby not too long ago. I believe it's kind of a parking lot that is entrenched in broken glass. I don't know exactly what the building is today. It was a necessity at the time. Everybody, all the politicians, all of the team representatives were trying to convince us. It became a relic almost immediately. But they did a good job. They were filling the place. There was a curiosity there. Roger Nielsen, who had coached in the league for some time, was the original head coach of the Florida Panthers. And he had devised a strategy that they eventually had to outlaw. This was very much like the hideous nature of considering Dean Smith to be one of the greatest coaches of all time. How is that possible when he devised one of the most diabolical, pathetic, and ridiculous strategies in all those McDonald's All-Americans, Lubie, all of those blue chippers, and he's going four corners, playing a game of Saluju, we used to call it in Brooklyn, where, you're keeping the ball away or the hat away from your little sister and you're throwing it around. And that was it. I mean, all of these great players, and he's scoring like 8 points a game. It was ridiculous. And the Panthers were known for the center ice trap, which eventually Gary Bettman and company had to look at in horror, like they were Colonel Kurtz at the end of the Apocalypse Now movie, and saying, the horror, we can't allow this, as no goals were being scored, and the opposition was always muddled down. They could never get into their own offensive zone because they put like 10 Panthers right there at the red line to stop everything. Now, we hadn't seen a whole lot of progress with the franchise until recently. They were meandering around and had that great success. Third year of the team's existence, they make it to the Stanley Cup final where they're shut down by Patrick Waugh. You fucking frog! I remember yelling that all during the final game. You fucking frog! What was that, double overtime we had to go through? The Beezers matching him shot for shot, standing on his head. But Patrick Waugh was sensational, and the Avalanche swept the Florida Panthers, and they basically swept them into, as Mike Tyson would say, Bolivian, because for the ensuing 30 some odd years, the Florida Panthers were kind of a non-entity here, and they really were befitting of the old joke that the only thing that people recognize on ice here is stuff they see at the bottom of a glass. But that hasn't been the case. A sensational run, a Cinderella run last year after barely making the playoffs. So they squeaked in on the final day of the regular season, and I believe they backed into it also. They become the 8th seed. They start knocking teams off one after another. You had Boston, you had Toronto in their path, a bunch of monsters, and they made their way to the Stanley Cup final. But by the time they got there, Lubie, they were just a broken down mash unit of a mess.
Yep.
Probably their healthiest player had a broken clavicle. Even the coach was in a cast. It was ridiculous. Paul Maurice, who had once mistakenly labeled as the French Joe Philbin, turns out this guy is one of the great philosophers of all time. He's up there with Martin Buber, Nietzsche, any of the greats, Plato, Aristotle. I mean, I love this guy at this point. And you have to like the Panthers' chances. We said this a couple of weeks ago as we were watching them get through their second-round series. You thought, you know what? This is a team that looks like it possibly can win it all, and now they have every opportunity as they'll face the Edmonton Oilers, which was also sort of a fortuitous break for them because they now have the home ice advantage, which in the NHL, what does that mean, Lubie? But I'm thinking they win it. I know you don't like to jinx it. They sure look good in the series against the Rangers. They snuffed them down to nothing, smothered them with that just incredibly aggressive forechecking style. Yep. And really didn't allow the Rangers to get much of a gallop going in that series. And even though all the games were close, they managed to suppress what was a potent Rangers offense throughout the regular season and shut down what was one of the better power plays in the league, if not the best. So we'll see what they can do. Of course, Edmonton comes with some premier weapons and Connor McDavid and Dreisaitl and even the Jewish kid, right? Hyman, is he Jewish? Did we ever figure that out?
I don't know. I don't know.
What's his name? Like Jacob Hyman or something. I don't know. But anyway, we'll become familiar with all of these cats and the cats themselves as the Stanley Cup finals get underway. We have to wait till Saturday night for that. Yes. But pretty good stuff. I mean, you who are the prince of paranoia when it comes to your own teams, you had to be more than satisfied and gratified that the Panthers were able to wrap this thing up in Game 6 on their home ice on Friday night.
It was fantastic. They were able to get it done. Game 6, they controlled the entire game. They got up 2-0. Yeah, Rangers again get a late goal, but immediately after that, the Panthers let them touch the puck again. So it really wasn't. It never was in question. What's interesting to me is just how good Shesterkin is, because Panthers should have had 6 or 7 goals the last 2 games. I mean, they not only controlled the puck like they did most of the games, but they were getting great opportunities, not just like throwing it in or getting it around the net. Like they were getting where they were passing the puck in front of the goalie, getting one-timers, getting rebounds, and they just couldn't get it past the guy. Look, the Panthers should have won that series in 4 or 5 and by 2 or 3 goals a game. I mean, they were clearly the better team that entire series. Shesterkin was just ridiculous and kept the Rangers alive. But look, someone showed the graphic, the goalies the Panthers have gotten through to get to where they are, and I think that's the difference. It's not like they didn't play good goalies last year, but they played like Vasilevsky up until this year. Many consider the best goalie in hockey. Swayman in the playoffs was dominating the end of the season and the playoffs. And then you have Shesterkin, who people think is the best goalie. They got through that fucking murderer's row somewhat unscathed. I mean, they didn't go to a Game 7 in any of the series. They controlled pretty much all the series. They're playing worse competition now. The Oilers and the Stars, by most people in hockey's estimation, were not on the same level as any of the 3 teams they played. But that was the case last year, too. So we'll see. The difference is, and you're right, last year they were death's door. And
yes, they were beaten a lot. Yeah.
I don't think anyone's hurt. I don't think it's the end of a hockey season. You're in the finals, and I don't think anyone's hurt. I don't think.
You wouldn't know with a hockey player, though. I mean, really.
Yeah,
they don't even tell you what body part the guy's injured. It's like upper body, lower body. What the fuck is that? I mean, talk about a vague injury report, because it doesn't matter. They could be completely crippled. They could come to the arena in a wheelchair, like Peyton Manning did when he won that Super Bowl. And they just push him out there, and they go ahead and they play hard. So what was a Bush League town, South Florida, especially with regards to hockey, now all of a sudden sits on the doorstep of possibly we could be drinking margaritas, Lubie, from the Stanley Cup. Be kind of interesting. The Panthers minus 125, slight favorites to win the series over Edmonton. That's a little bit of a surprise. I thought they'd be a little more heavily favored in that, although not heavily favored overall. In Edmonton, you only get plus 105, so almost even money. You throw a stick down, you get 105 on that. The Cats were 10-1. The Panthers were 10-1 going into the postseason to win the Stanley Cup. So that would have been the time to get in on it. If you're jumping on the bandwagon now, you're a little late to the party. The Celtics and the Mavs, they get underway on Thursday night. The Celtics are fairly heavily favored in this series. What do you think? The Celtics and the Mavs, isn't it June 6th? Thursday night, Libby. That's when it's
Thursday night. That's crazy. Oh God, that's annoying. I was hoping it was tonight. Oh Jesus.
No, nothing going tonight. Tonight's not the night. You have to lay 225 to win 100 on the Celtics. You're getting plus 185 with the Mavericks in the series. Does that tempt you at all? Plus 185. I know you were very successful, even though this wasn't in your nature, on the degenerate SATs. When you were applying for various colleges, you ended up at Florida State, largely because you aced the degenerate SATs, which one of the things on the degenerate SATs. See, I think, if you had regular math, that's one thing. But when I was a kid, if you took the degenerate SATs, we could figure out anything, right? If somebody had a proposition, one of the questions would be a pick six pool has a carryover jackpot of 189,000. 2,747,000 are bet into it today that it's got to be a mandatory payoff. If you're one of 17 guys to hold a winning ticket on the mandatory payoff day, what would your payoff be? And immediately, doesn't matter. The dumbest fucking kid in the class would say, all right, that's $82,462, Joe. Okay, yeah, you got it. But on the degenerate SATs, one of the essay type questions, I guess, was trying to match, how they have the column and they list the trophies in the NHL on one side and what they represent on the other, and you got to do that little squiggly line and connect them. Yeah. So you also in the hockey series you get 2-1 on Connor McDavid to win the Conn Smythe, which is for the MVP, the Conn Smythe. I could name you a couple of them, right? Conn Smythe, MVP of the finals. Vezina is the goalie, and then after that you're on your own. Yeah, I don't know. Hockey trophies. Jason Tatum to be the MVP, minus 120. So there's an assumption there that the Celtics are going to win the NBA Finals. What do you think?
5 or 6. This and we're talking to some other people. It's like people aren't watching the playoffs. The Mavs have played a really tough fucking route. I mean, like the Clippers round 1,
much harder than the Celtics.
They should have lost every series, and they won every series in less than 7. They didn't get taken to 7 in any series. The last 2, the Nuggets, who were by many people's account, the Thunder, who were right there with the Nuggets and the T-Wolves all year long. They beaten 5 or 6. They were dominating the shit out of the Thunder. Then they play a team that is clearly better than them, and the T-Wolves, by most people's estimation, T-Wolves were fighting for the 1 seed all year long, and they annihilated them. I mean, they had a gentleman's sweep. It was only 5 games. They won 5 games, but that one game that they did give up, no one thought they'd lose that game. I mean, they're playing really good basketball, whereas the Celtics have played not one team with their best player for the entire series. Most of the teams were banged up and bruised that they played, and they looked in those series. So to me,
uninspiring. Yeah,
I think the Mavs are the better. The Celtics, to me, were the 4th or 5th best team in the league. They just had a really good record because the East was it just was, and then it was injured in the playoffs on top of that. I think the Mavs win, and I think they win it easy. I just do.
That plus 25 is looking pretty robust to you
right now, Louis. Yes. I think people are, the Northeast has a big footprint in the media world, and they fell in love with the Celtics, but they haven't watched the game. Like the Pacers should have won the series, and were missing their best player for 2 of the games. The Cavs hung around in that series and were missing their best player for 2 games. I don't know.
And if you look at the backcourt matchup, who has the edge? You got Tatum and Jaylen Brown, a great tandem. Nobody would argue that. Excellent players. And then you're going against Doncic and Kyrie, which you would probably give the edge, I would have to think, since Stan Van Gundy has declared that this might be the greatest scoring backcourt in NBA history. Never mind Clyde Frazier and the Pearl. Never mind Isaiah and Joe Dumars. Never mind any of those previous tandems, Jerry West and anybody. But said they might be the best scoring tandem among guards in NBA history, but they certainly deserve a little bit of a nod, I think,
Yes.
over even Tatum and Brown, as talented as those guys are. So that'll be interesting. It gets underway Thursday. Why are they beating the shit? They're treating Caitlin Clark like she was a masked wrestler from Missouri coming into Madison Square Garden to take on San Martino and Gorilla Monsoon. You got to be kidding me. Well, what's happening with that, Lubie? What do you make of that? Is that something that the commissioner needs to intervene and say, lay off this chick? She's everybody's meal ticket.
Oh, God. Get out of here.
Jealousy? Can it go that far? I mean, do they really need to rough this woman up? I saw where the Liberty signed Rick Mahorn for tonight's game against the Indiana Fever. Unbelievable. They just want to knock this woman out. I don't understand it. She doesn't seem like a person that would inspire this kind of negativity, does she? I mean, you would think they would welcome her into the league there. I know she's getting a lot of attention, but without her, who's watching WNBA games? I'm actually like tuning in to see, what's going on with that. Crazy. I'm looking at them as betting propositions. People that bet online are loving every second of this. And
I hope they are.
why would you want to kill the golden goose if you were one of these other women in the WNBA who have been toiling in anonymity for fucking ever, Lubie? For fucking ever.
I mean, they're not thinking like that, which they probably should. Look, as much as you like or dislike her, she's bringing attention to the league and the sport that has never really been, hasn't been seen in a long time, let's say. But it doesn't matter. That's all people keep talking about is her. And when they challenged her, people ran to her defense. And it's like, okay, they're still players. They're competitive, and that's what you're seeing.
They're treating her like Robbie Benson in One-on-One, the worst sports movie ever made. Remember that? One-on-one, I want to play that game tonight. Remember they just the coach, the angry coach who hated Benson because he didn't do the things the way that he wanted him to. Just had people go out there and like Bobby Knight, they assigned him to go and beat the shit out of the guy. Something's got to give there, man. You don't want to mess with Caitlin Clark and those zillions of dollars she's bringing in, boys. Come on. The only thing hotter than Aaron Judge in the month of May was the sun here in South Florida, I think, where it was like 100 degrees every day. How about these stats, Libby, for the month of May? Got off to a cold start. Almost looked like Giancarlo Stanton coming out of the chute there. Only difference is Stanton usually is on injured reserve by now, whereas Judge has just catapulted himself again among the all-time premium players in baseball. May hits 371, Libby. 14 home runs, 12 doubles, and 27 RBIs. He walked 22 times. And that OPS, which, speaking of degenerate math, is a statistic I really don't fully understand, although I get it. But I'm not sure exactly how it's calculated. But I know this is a huge number, 1.415 OPS. Usually if you see somebody around 800, you're thinking, wow, that's unbelievable. This guy's at 1.415. And then Juan Soto, who we're going to have to find another character to put in this equation. And we said this for years about Bryce Harper, that we couldn't decide what was more overrated. The Florida stone crab, which goes for about $80 a pound, and you're lucky if you get like 3 bites of meat out of it, or Bryce Harper, who was making all of his money, 30, 40 million a year at a time when that was a big salary in Major League Baseball, and he's hitting 262 with 28 home runs. And you're thinking, what's the big deal there? Then he goes out and wins like back-to-back MVPs or something along those lines. Juan Soto, though, we put Soto into the equation, thinking that 260 he hit with San Diego last year didn't exactly represent the guy that was going to make you forget about Ty fucking Cobb. But, wow, what a season he's having in his contract year. The Yankees going to be finding, I would imagine, major competition to sign this guy to a huge contract. 17 home runs, 53 RBIs so far, a 322 batting average, including 2 homers, and a game decider in the 9th inning of their victory yesterday as they swept the San Francisco Giants. The Yankees, without Garrett Cole, who's coming back, all of a sudden blossoming and having one monster year. But Soto and Judge have been absolutely amazing through the month of May now and into early June. All right, we have to run. A lot of fun being with you. It's going to be weird. I'm going to have to go through some kind of withdrawal here. No playoff basketball, no playoff hockey until Thursday night. But we'll find a way to occupy the time. Maybe we can watch Caitlin Clark. I think she's going to follow Ronda Rousey into the UFC. I heard Dana White was hanging around the Fever game the other day saying, hey, if you could take that kind of punishment here from these girls, I know you could be big and gnarly. All right, we got to run. Thanks so much for being with us. Hope you guys have a great week. This is just the beginning, only the beginning of what we want to feel forever. From Mike Lubie Lubitz, I'm Jeff DeForest. We'll see you next time on the next edition of the Morning Briefing. it.